Part 2 of this historical documentary looks at Joan of Navarre's life with her second husband, Henry IV of England, and her life after his death. Henry IV, who had now become King of England, would be looking for a new wife as he was now a widow. His eyes would turn to Joan of Navarre, whom he had stayed with during his exile in Brittany. The match was a personal choice made by Henry and not one made for a political alliance. Joan was initially very hesitant to accept Henry's proposal. Not because she had any dislike to him, but rather she wanted to stay in Brittany to act as regent to her son and give stability to the dukedom. Eventually, though, she would agree to marry Henry. But not before signing a treaty with the Duke of Burgundy, who would replace her as regent to her son and promise not to interfere in the laws, customs and traditions of Brittany. Joan would marry Henry on the 7th of February 1403 at Winchester Cathedral. 19 days later, on the 26th of February 1403, she would enter London, where she would be coronated as Consort Queen of England. When she came to England, Joan would bring with her a Breton entourage which included 2 of her own daughters. The English Parliament, which was very sensitive at the time due to the circumstances of how Henry IV had claimed the throne, would take exception to Joan's court and would exile them from the country. There would be no surviving children in the marriage of Henry IV and Joan of Navarre, although in the same year of their marriage. There would be no surviving children in the marriage of Henry IV and Joan of Navarre, although in the same year of their marriage. In 1406, 3 years after his arrival in England, her 2 daughters who travelled with her, would be ordered to return to Brittany on the order of Joan's son, John V of Brittany. Both Margaret and Blanche were undoubtedly recalled to Brittany as their older brother had found them political matches in marriage, as both were wed the following year. In 1419, Joan's husband, Henry IV, died on the 20th of March in the Jerusalem House, another name for the abbot's house at Westminster Abbey. Henry IV's oldest son would inherit throne and be coronate Henry V. Joan always had a very good relationship with all her second husband's children, especially Henry. Henry would look after his stepmother initially, allowing her the use of several royal castles, including Windsor Castle. The relationship, though, that Joan had with her stepson and king would soon turn sour. On the 25th of October 1415, Joan's second, Arthur, was part of the French army at the Battle of Agincourt. During the battle, Arthur was wounded and captured by the English forces led by Joan's stepson, Henry V. Henry brought Arthur back to England as a hostage. On their return, Joan would petition Henry for her son's release, which Henry refused. Eventually, Arthur would be released in 1420 in order to help persuade his from John, Duke of Brittany, to sign the Treaty of Troyes. Later, Arthur would be created as the Duke of Touraine by the English, but was deprived of any power. Joan's relationship with Henry V would completely break down in 1419. Joan's personal confessor, Friar Randolph, went to Parliament and accused Joan of being a witch and had plotted to assassinate the king. As a result, Joan was imprisoned at Pevensey Castle near modern-day Eastbourne in West Sussex, and all of her estates and properties were confiscated. Joan, though, was never formally charged for being a witch, a punishment with normally a death sentence by being burnt at the stake. Most likely the reason for imprisonment and punishment was to grab all of her assets rather than the belief that she was an actual witch. Joan's imprisonment, though, was one of luxury, being kept in the relative comfort of the keep at Pevensey and still allowed to keep her servants and receive guests. After 3 months, Joan was moved to Leeds Castle in Kent, where she would see out the rest of her imprisonment in the same comfort of her previous location. During 1422, during his campaign in France during the 100 Years' War, Henry V would fall in, most likely with dysentery. Before his death, Henry would order the release of Joan and the restoration of her property and estates. Joan would live out a quiet life after her release and would die at her home in Havering Abbey Bower in Essex in 1437 at the age of around 68 to 69. She would be buried next to her second husband, Henry IV, in Canterbury Cathedral, where the effigy on her tomb can still be seen today.